Hello, this is Stacy from Truly Majestic. Let's tell you guys where to get your wool cheap. So the first place you want to go to is worldofwool.com or worldofwool.co.uk. They ship out of England, but their prices are so rock bottom that I have customers in Canada and Australia who are buying from them and saying, actually, the price of the wool here is half the price of, even with the shipping, of what I would have bought it in my own country. So they do have really incredible deals, and the more you buy, they automatically add a discount to your cart. So let me show you how to use their website because it's absolutely overwhelming. They have over 500 varieties of wool roving. Some work and some don't work. So let's get to it. I'm just going to go through their website quickly. I can't go through everything, but these are the foundational principles that will have you well on your way to picking the right wool. Now at the top I've circled the wools that are really good for arm knitting, and you have natural undyed wool, dyed wool, blends, and also yarn. Let's start on the natural wool. So go and click on natural wool, and then you have all these crazy varieties. Just click on all. So you want to select all of them. And then you go to price. It's sorted already, high to low. You want to sort that from low to high, and this will get you the cheapest wool. So then you scroll down and go through all this scoured wool, ugly, washed, unwashed, until you find wool tops or wool roving. It's the same thing, it's interchangeable, wool tops or wool roving. Once you go into that, if you find one you like, you need to look for the micron count. The micron count is simply how soft or how coarse it is. The lower the micron count, the softer it is. 16 is like insanely soft, and that's almost as small as a micron count gets. 6T is very coarse, and that's about as high as a micron count gets. Once you've found a wool and you're happy with the softness of it, you can pop into the next section that gives you more about what you can do with it, and you want it to say it can be needle felted or wet felted, because in order to arm knit blankets that don't shed, we need to first felt up the wool roving, and I'll show you how to do that in another lesson. Let's go into blends next. So the blends is the top tab on the World of Wool website, and this is a blend of different types of wool, or wool and silk, wool and bamboo fibers, all different types of blends. I've highlighted the ones in red that I've used and they work great. And I've also highlighted in gray the ones that I've used and they do not work. So you don't want to buy those. And then there's a few that I have left blank. I haven't tried this. Now one of these is a custom blend. That's actually you make your own blend. And just a hint for that, you need to have at least 70% wool in your blend. So you can do 70% wool, 30% silk. If you go under 70% wool, 60% or 50%, and then mix it with a different fiber like silk or bamboo, it doesn't stick together that well. So that's just a helpful blending tip. Next, we're going to go into the yarn section. So if you pop open the yarn tab at the top of their website, you see all these different types of yarns. You want jumbo yarn for arm knitting. Now once you get into that page, you have some choices on the left hand side here, the different types of wool, and I've used all of these wools and all of them work great. Their micron count is on the lower side, it's not like 35 or 40, and you can use all those wools. The only difference between the arm knitting yarn, which this is jumbo arm knitting yarn, and their regular dyed wool is how much you're buying. See, if you see down here, it's 1,000 grams. So that's 1 kilo. You're buying 1 kilo at a time. The price is exactly the same if you go to another part of their website and just look at their dyed wools. The only difference is it shows the wool in 100 grams and not 1,000 grams. By the way, those of you who are working in pounds and ounces, 1 kilo or 1,000 grams is 2.2 pounds, and that is actually about 40 meters in length. Okay, the next section. Are you guys with me so far? If you're not with me, put comments under this video and I'll definitely try to get back to you. So the next section is just dyed wools, and I've circled all of these types of wools that work great, and you can go in there because it's the dyed wool section and not the arm knitting yarn section. Remember, they will be listed in like 100 gram slots, but World of Wool always tries to give you one long continuous line of yarn. They don't break it up into bits so you have lots of knots. So you can go and order 10 units of 100 grams to make 1 kilo of something if you don't find it in the arm knitting yarn section. It'll be exactly the same as if you ordered 1 kilo from the jumbo yarn section. Wool is actually measured in microns. I know this sounds technical and scary, but it's very simple. The higher the micron, the coarser the wool. The lower the microns, the softer the wool. So a micron is actually measuring the diameter of one strand of fiber. So if it's very thin, it's very soft. If it's very thick, it's very coarse. And that's how you measure the softness. You can also find out just by touching the wool if it's coarse or soft. This picture is quite coarse. It looks a bit like a scouring pad, and it would be rough wool to actually arm knit with. However, you can, but it'll just be itchy. This is merino wool, and it's very soft. You can have it right on your skin, and there's absolutely no itch at all. So as far as coarseness or softness, it depends on what you want to do with it, what's best for you. If you're going to be walking around in a sleeveless tops and your shorts and you want to bundle up in a blanket, you want merino wool. But if it's just going to be on your bed and you know you're not going to be bundling up in it, the coarser wool is perfect. And usually the coarser wool is cheaper, generally, and also the undyed wool is cheaper. I know that's kind of obvious. For arm knitting, you want something that will felt up. And actually, to do that, you can just take a tuft of wool roving in your hands and squidge it up and roll it around. Your hands should be just slightly damp. Just get them a little bit damp if they're not, and roll this up. If it starts to get stiff and sticking together, that's good. It felts. But if it just doesn't felt, if it doesn't stick together, see, this is sticking a little bit. Just barely. But if it doesn't stick together, then it doesn't felt up, and we have to have felting for a good blanket that can be washed. It's a must. You must have it be able to felt. So you can see here it's actually started to felt together. So that's how you can tell if this is going to be good for arm knitting or not. You can also use bulky 6 weight yarn, and you can get it at Michael's, Amazon, eBay. There's lots of different places that you can find bulky yarn, and it all works great. However, you might have to double it up when you're knitting because nothing is really as bulky as plain wool roving. So that's just something that you can do if you don't want to buy the wool roving. You can also use regular thin yarn, but there is a big trick because this really bunches up a lot and you need about 6 to 10 strands to get it nice and bulky. So I have a trick for you in the next lesson, how to use regular yarn to arm knit with. So let's do a quick recap of lesson 1. You learned where to buy your wool roving. I buy mine from World of Wool. It's cheap, but you can look for wool roving or wool tops anywhere on the internet. You might find it closer to you somewhere. Which wool is good by the Micron Count, you should know that, and if it can be felted up. And also, what other types of yarn you can use for these projects. You can use anything that's bulky, super chunky, but it just might need to be doubled up, so take that into consideration. And I'm going to teach you how to arm knit with really thin yarn, some tips and tricks in the next lesson. I'll see you then.